Should Nigeria expect somewhat of the revenge of the poor? This has happened in countries like Russia, France, and even in Sudan. A report by the Brookings Institute says it is now Nigeria that has the most populous people in the world who get by on less than the equivalent of $1.90 a day. This indicates that Nigeria has overtaken India as the country with the largest number of extreme poor people. Father Ehusani is one of those who has been advising Nigeria's policymakers to prepare for the social upheaval that will be caused by deepening poverty and the growing inequality between the rich and the poor in this country. In one of his homilies, the anti-poverty activist talked about the revenge of the poor. Let's watch this.
So when you have a situation, rather than the people making sacrifice and demonstrating how much sacrifice you have made for the people, then we say, yes, you be our leader because you have suffered for us. You have denied yourself legitimate pleasures for our sake. That is what used to qualify people for leadership. Now, we have people who conquer us. They conquer us, then they take the resources of our land to reconquer us and remain there, and it becomes difficult to move them out of power. But someday, as I always say, the revenge of the poor is at the corner. The revenge of the poor is coming. And that one, you will not be able to do anything about it. You can have your jeep. You can have your generators. You can have everything bulletproof. But the revenge of the poor, it happened in France. It happened in Russia. It has just happened in Sudan. It will happen here. Unless we change our course, we will end up where we are heading. And where we are heading now is unfortunately, it's a violent revolution.
Well, for more on these, I've now been joined in the studios by the theologian, human rights activist, or the activist of the poor, and social commentator and former Secretary General of the Catholic Secretariat in Nigeria, Father George Ehusani, who is currently the Executive Director of the Lux Terra Leadership Foundation, and also by Omagbitse Barrow, who is a strategic consultant and accountant versed in poverty alleviation issues. Gentlemen, very warm welcome to the Arise interview.
Thank you.
That sounded very revolutionary, and I'm sure in some quarters they'll be looking at it like a hate speech. Father Ehusani?
Hate speech? Truth can sound like hate speech because they say truth is bitter. If truth is bitter, then it can sound like hate speech. But take a close look at history and the way societies have evolved. When so many people do not count and they think they do not count, when so many people have nothing to lose, you know, I have mentioned perhaps here before about the young people in Lagos, on the streets of Lagos, who were trying to mug somebody, a madam in a fantastic jeep, and they wanted to mug her to extort money out of her. And as she was resisting, one of them said, one of the Alaye boys said, I will deal with you. You know I am not useful. Now, a society that harbors too many young people who believe they are not useful, who believe that their lives don't count for anything, is an unfortunate society. And we should work hard to make sure that we reduce the number of young people in our society who have come to believe that their life is of no use.
That's what President Muhammadu Buhari has pledged to do in his 3-point agenda. Take 10 million Nigerians out of poverty. In 10 years, 100 million. That is 10 million Nigerians every year. In another 10 years, 100 million would have been out. Let me ask Omagbitse, yes. Are the social intervention programs really working? Because the government says, I mean, from the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, they've taken over 1 million out of poverty with the social intervention programs. The Empower project and the trader money, 5,000, which is graduated to 10,000. Those even living in poverty that are not using the 5,000 naira, but to keep body and soul together.
Well, one of the things I think about social welfare programs is about sustainability. I personally have a problem with welfare programs that just give cash handouts to people. So, for example, if you have 5 or 10,000 naira to give to people who you say are poor, what happens when that poor person needs medical care? The person has already spent the money anyway, so the person is left with nothing. I would say that I would prefer schemes that capacitate certain institutions. For example, health insurance. So if I were running such a program, I would say 10,000 naira, why don't I split it into 3 or into 4 parts? If I have to give a person 1/4 of it as cash, then I would put the other quarter, for example, in health insurance so that that person can go to hospital and always receive health care. The person will fall sick, it is certain. It is also certain that people will get old and retire. So wouldn't it be good if we had set aside some amount of that cash handout into a pension or a retirement scheme for people? So I think that, and overall it will create savings, gross national savings that is required to actually capacitate the economy, to prepare the grounds for the transformation of the society. So I'm very concerned about just giving cash to people.
Okay, Father Ehusani, he's talked about schemes, that are not cash exempted. And over 30 years, we've had certain institutions like the National Directorate of Employment, which is supposed to take, the NDE, which is supposed to take care of these, the youth population for skilled and unskilled, trainees and trainers, to make them, even employers of labor themselves, maybe 4 or 5 people. You have SMED and the small, medium entrepreneurship development agencies, multiplicity of agencies to alleviate poverty. What is really wrong here?
I don't think it takes a soothsayer to, decode what is wrong. We have a lot of people occupying positions of responsibility in this country who have no business being there. People who have no concern or care or commitment to the common good of Nigerians. A lot of positions, just look at the way people are appointed to positions through patronage. Somebody was very active in elections and the person is rewarded for being active in elections by being appointed to boards or even to executive heads of corporations and agencies. Now, is that how...
Without the specialist knowledge.
Without the specialist knowledge, without the expertise, without the commitment to the common good. Like I say, a lot of people, when people get appointed to those positions, you see a number of congratulatory messages because they have been appointed to positions where they can, levels change for them. Levels change for them, but the levels often don't change for the people they are supposed to provide for. So I am saying, first of all, let's begin with the caliber of people that are appointed to positions, the expertise or lack of it of people appointed to positions. Then, what is their track record in terms of commitment to the common good, commitment to taking people out of poverty, out of ignorance, out of disease, and so on and so forth. If it is to reward people, which is what I see around, to reward people for loyalty, then we're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to get anywhere if appointments are to reward people. Nigeria has people. At every level, in every sector, Nigeria has people. I mean, we are among the most trained people in Africa, no doubt. Nigerians
theoretically.
Yeah. Talk about United States, the single nation that has per capita the most educated people. They are Nigerians. So we do have the people to serve in every sector, in every area, but do they get appointed to such positions? If positions are reserved for party faithfuls and for loyalists and so on, then we are not yet at the point of taking the very first set of steps to get out of this. So you have agencies, you have all kinds of parastatals and agencies, but the people are just taking care of themselves. When an agency has a budget, and then the first thing they do is to buy a big CVU in order for the chief executive.
To be able to go around
Yes. Take a look at the 2020 budget. What is the percentage of the budget that is for capital expenditures to do something for the population, and the percentage of the budget that is for taking care of the bureaucracy? I mean, we just heard recently how many billion, 30-something billion to renovate the National Assembly. National Assembly that was renovated 7-8 years ago. 37 billion, more than what was used to build the National Assembly, to renovate the National Assembly. Now, and you go around Abuja, and I'm not talking of our villages, go around Abuja and see villages like in the 19th century. You see a lot of those slum settlements. I visited one last week, and the level of destitution, dehumanizing destitution, in villages around the Federal Capital Territory. And then they keep reading in the newspaper and watching on TV about these billions and billions and billions voted. And I am saying, I am genuinely afraid. When I talk of the revenge of the poor, it is not about any threat. It is about fear. I am genuinely afraid that this horde of jobless, unemployed and often unemployable young people, because they have not been trained.
So the Almajiri phenomenon is not limited to the north. We see that in the south
It's
too.
all over the place. We are seeing pictures on social media of herds and herds and herds of young people that are just roaming the streets. And you go to every town and every village in this country, at 11 a.m., you see able-bodied young men just sitting under the tree and so on. They must eat. The human being has an incredible desire, sense of to live, to survive, survival instinct. And they will survive, unfortunately, by any means. So, talk about human security. Human security is not just to buy guns and equip soldiers. Human security is about taking care of the basic needs of people. Provide the basic infrastructures for people so that they can live dignified lives. Where that is absent, there is no basis for security. There is no basis for peace. And I keep saying that, look, those who are privileged in this society, we all have a major responsibility. The privilege, where are our children going to live? Is it in this society? They say, as you make your bed, so you lie on it. Is it in this kind of society? If people think that it is by having tall fences, they think that it is by having iron bars, tall fences, bulletproof doors, and bulletproof cars that is going to solve our problem, then I will say we are mistaken. So for me, it is for us to create a society where a more equitable society, where the children of the poor can have access to, let's say, basic education, access to basic health care. Nobody is asking, the poor, children of the poor are not asking to go to England or to the UK for education. They are asking to have LGA school raised to a certain standard.
All right. Not enough is being done by African countries to end extreme poverty by the year 2030, a key target among 17 ambitious global development goals agreed at the United Nations. But this is unlikely to be met. One of the commitments of Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari's administration is to lift no fewer than 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in 2020. The government says it intends to achieve this feat by creating an enabling environment for small-scale businesses to thrive. What this translates to is that we ought to see the creation of more jobs to reduce unemployment and pulling as many Nigerians as possible out of poverty. We'll be chatting some more with our guest in a moment. But first, here is Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari listing investments and reforms in agriculture as ways conceived by his government to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in the next 10 years.
I have just told you what we are doing in farming. We inherited something from our colonial masters, that if you want loan from the banks, you take collateral, either your house, your land, or something which is the banks will accept. Our ordinary farmers, who are the majority of the population, even if they have 1 million hectares, they don't have the money to pay surveyors to survey their land. get certificate of occupancy, go to the banks and get interest at a higher rate. We made it states, we give the money to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development to help farmers to buy fertilizer and other inputs at very, very low interest. That encourages farmers, and it provides us food security. And nobody regrets it. People went back and earned respectful living by producing food, feeding themselves, and taking the excess to the market.
House President Muhammadu Buhari at the Future Initiative Investments sometime last year in Doha. I still have with me, like I said, the theologian, human rights activist, social campaigner George Ehusani, and Omagbitse Barrow. Omagbitse, let me start with you. Father Ehusani said so much about poor leadership direction in executing projects that are supposed to have, lifted so many of the youths out of poverty. Remember, I mentioned the National Directorate of Employment. It's been on for over 30 years. What significant strategic policies can the government, for example, bring to the fore with its determination to get 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in the next 10 years? That the likes of ND or Smedan or Empire are not doing.
I think, like Father George said, some of the challenges stem from the underlying values that are driving the behaviors and the actions of people who are different levels of government. So these institutions are there. They are set up with clear and very noble goals and aspirations. It's all about the quality of people and the choices that they make. I find that in Nigeria, just like he said, the preparation, the society, creates certain types of leaders. And unfortunately, like they say, sometimes societies get the leaders that they actually deserve. So Nigeria is at a point where all these various schemes, good on paper, but poor on execution. And poor on execution for one, lack of proper values. What is driving the people and what is their motive? Two, a lack of innovation. There's just not enough ideas. There's just not enough conversations about the right type. Because if you are distracted, if you get to a top government job, to the head of a parastate, and all you're thinking about is sorting out your political masters and patronage and giving people contracts and taking care of the people in your hometown, how would you have the time or the inclination or the intellect to actually innovate and come up with bright ideas to
and
transform?
there is no evaluation system.
Exactly, and I'll say something. So just to speak to your question, what should we be doing? We should be facilitating enterprise. I think that that's almost the most simple thing that you should do. Let's use a simple place like Abuja, where very wealthy people stay in the big city, and very poor people stay in places like Sabon Kawu and in Kabusa village, like Father George mentioned. Just facilitate enterprise. For example, in every ward in Nigeria, every village in Nigeria, there's some area of comparative advantage that they have, whether it is in fishing, whether it is in farming, or in local production of one thing or the other. Guess what? You don't need to go far to look for foreign investors. The investors are in Maitama. The investors are in Asokoro.
Do they believe in such investments?
So you've got
because they are looking at the ROI. I mean, there's the oil to lift, there's the petroleum products to import, running into billions of dollars.
We've created a system that favors such things. So everybody hears that Nigeria has released budget and we are clapping that the budget is, but it's a budget that is just going to confirm that the public service, that government is the largest spender in Nigeria, and that people will continue to leech on to government, and everybody wants to be in the corridors of government and power. So we've got to restructure the way we think about developing a society from being government-focused, patronage-focused, rent-seeking focused to real enterprise. We don't have enough people who are doing real business in Nigeria. And when the government says that they are supporting small businesses, well, small businesses are dying under multiple taxation in various states all over Nigeria. Small businesses are dying with
registering those businesses, even with NAFDAC, is the most Herculean
all the different
process any
levies.
entrepreneur will go through in Nigeria. So it costs millions for me to come and register a pure water business or a cassava chip making business.
Someone actually said that if you go to hell, there will have to be a different version for there will be something a better place for Nigerian business people. That decent Nigerian business people deserve a second kind of chance in eternal life because they've gone through hell here, and they don't deserve another hell in eternity. You know, that there should be a special place for Nigerian entrepreneurs because it's a really difficult terrain.
Okay, this time bomb, Father Ehusani, the poverty time bomb, of course, can always be eliminated, be averted.
Can be averted.
Yes, can be averted, you know, with the good policies. But in Nigeria, it's always government, government, government. Where are the private initiatives? In the time past, we had multinational companies with their technical training institutions. USA had it, the vehicle assembly plants from Volkswagen to Steyr to Mercedes in Enugu and the rest. What went wrong?
Good, you have answered it. Government, government, government. Government in Nigeria is too heavy. You just heard it. Take the budget and see how much of the budget is for bureaucracy, government bureaucracy. Government is too heavy. Government must begin to step back. Take education, for example. Once upon a time, 75, 80, 90% of schools were owned by voluntary agencies. So government was not involved in the administration of those institutions. And with very little resources, many, let's say, missionary groups, Anglican, Catholic, Methodist, Presbyterian, they ran schools, ran top-level schools. You didn't need to send your children overseas. Here in the villages of this country, there were schools that were top-level and got O-level and A-level GCE top marks from going to those schools in the remotest villages in this country. But government...
These are some of the people ruling the country now.
Government took over those schools. Government took over those schools. And today, government is running, we're supposed to be running a federation, but government is running primary schools in Nigeria. We're supposed to be running federation. Government is running primary schools, secondary schools,
because the local governments and the states cannot afford to,
Good.
you know, pay the teachers and the rest.
So
remember?
the government needs to begin to step back. We need to recognize why people are in government, whether it is local or state or federal government. Why are you in leadership? Why are you in government? Just so that you may leave poverty behind and move to another level, or so that people may be served. This whole distinction between authority and service, that people should know that to be in authority is in order to serve. And if you are not able to serve, if you are there for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, and you can see you're not making a change, a responsible person should even resign. Because if you know the reason why you are there, if after 2 or 3 years you are not making any positive impact, you should on your own offer to resign so that your society can be better by people who are more equipped coming in. So you ask about other agencies. You just said, even to register a pure water a company, the hassle you go through. Now, so all other agencies have been paralyzed, have been rendered prostrate on account of this overarching monstrous entity we call government. So everybody in government at the federal level, at the state level and local government level, we need to begin to recognize that government is becoming a cog in our developmental wheel.
So you think certain services of government or governance should be fanned out to the private sector?
Just to be found out. And then, how many people are in government? Maybe 5%. But then they control 99% of our economy. They control, there's nothing you can do without government. So they need to begin to leave these things out for other people to handle. I mean, from police force, can you imagine that in your village, if there's something serious that police need to take action, sometimes unless they get instruction from Abuja, they can't take action. That kind of scenario cannot lead to the development of any society. So the federal government needs to begin to leave certain things to state need to leave certain things to local government,
I'm sure that will be engaging the minds of members of the National Assembly when they again, some people will say it's a yearly or annual jamboree of constitutional review. We've been having that since 1999. They probably would be inserting such clauses.
We made a major mistake in 1999. 1998, 1999, I think a major mistake was made and we are all paying for it now. Before 1966-67, we had a constitution that was a federal constitution. Now, when the military came, to make governance easy for themselves, they went into a unitary system. Now, we came in 99, and then the military gave us a constitution, which is not really a federal constitution. We adopted it, and we thought we could patch with it. But I think we need to go back to review that whole thing and return to the pre-1966 constitution so that we can begin to address these issues. For example, making the various regions or subnational units take responsibility for
certain things. Yeah, okay. Would look more at that. Father Ehusani, you were making some submissions about the Nigerian Constitution, 1999, as amended. Did you think that it was at that 1999 the national have amended?
We had a unique opportunity. We were beginning a new country.
But is the Constitution the problem of Nigeria?
The structure.
Because you have the Supreme Court, you have a 3-tier system of government.
The juridical structure of the country. That is what sets the parameters for our mutual relations. It sets the parameters. A situation where the local government chairman, the state government governor, and everybody runs to Abuja at the end of the month to collect handouts to go and run their states is undesirable. Now, if we had a different kind of constitution, okay, for example, sharing, the orientation of sharing, it is there, it is constitutional, that whatever we make, we share. Whatever we make, we share. And so we don't have future fund in this country. There was a time in this country where we were making loads of money. But because our constitution says whatever we make, we share, we never saved anything for the rainy day.
We still have the Nigerian Sovereign Wealth Fund.
Sovereign Wealth Fund, how much do we have there? Anyway, the Constitution has a lot to play. If we were running the kind of constitution we had before the Civil War, every region was semi-independent. They generated their resources, they ran their places, and they competed with other regions. Now, that continues to be desirable. Today,
a lot of growth. People say could be measured.
Yes,
then.
yes. But right now, everybody is looking at the center, and then the people at the center have become too powerful. Too powerful because they control all the resources. I mean, to get license for this, you need federal government. To get this, you need federal government. You need federal government for everything. And it is not helping the growth of this country. So constitution is very important.
Okay. Omagbitse, Mr. President was at the Riyadh conference for the future investment conference then sometime last year, and he harped on how fertilizer, for example, is being, the cost is being brought down, easily distributed to farmers. That is, farming for this government is key to getting the Nigerian youth engaged away from poverty. And some results are already being achieved. The government says there's self-sufficiency in the production of rice, which, government used to spend billions of dollars importing, or people importing and not paying duties and the rest. Is that, a sine qua non for that economic El Dorado to be achieved?
Agriculture will play a role in transforming the economy of Nigeria. But every economist or student of economics will agree with me that to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor, a huge gap that exists in Nigeria, that the real solution lies in what Bill Gates described as focusing on the soft infrastructure. The real solution sustainably to poverty in any society, and this was how countries in Europe America, and all the other developed countries, Singapore, this was how they transformed. They transformed by paying attention to three things. One, education. The quality of education. So in Nigeria, we need to address that. Two, exposure. That is, people's minds. People need to be enlightened beyond just going to school. And thirdly, perhaps the most powerful one, is technology. Not just to adopt, use iPad, telephone, and so on, smartphones and so on, but to actually use technology properly to transform the society. So I would say that those three things are the recipes for any society's transformation. It has worked in other societies, and those are the areas we need to pay attention to. Let me pick education, for example. The quality of education, not building large structures. So Bill Gates spoke about that. Nigerian leaders are accustomed, and our people, we clap hands at tape cutting ceremonies where you are building new physical infrastructure in education. What about the quality of our teachers? What about the remuneration that teachers at basic education level get? Nobody addresses that. Basic education is very important. In addition to that, functional life skills education. Education that will actually prepare people for the workplace.
Does it need entrepreneurship skills to be taught in school?
Because
government has introduced that.
Someone said to me that they were going to introduce entrepreneurship. I said, when I was in my final year in university, we had entrepreneurial development. The quality, what was the quality of the person who was teaching you? Has the person set up a business before? So the quality, the education, that's why I say functional life skills, meaning that it's not about the academics of entrepreneurial development, but the practical dimensions of it. And I went to perhaps what people would consider one of the best business schools in Nigeria, owned by the government years ago. And I didn't get a quality entrepreneurial or business education. So I think that those are the issues. And in addition to that, on education, the concept of, and Father George has been talking about this, political literacy. You see, the problem is that how do we organize ourselves around political movement? How do we participate in politics? This thing we call a constitution, this thing we call democracy. Do Nigerians really understand what democracy really is?
Or are we still, can the hungry man understand that?
And interestingly, how about those who are not hungry? Do they understand it? Or do they understand their role only as surrogates to go there and collect money from the big men? So the people who are educated, the people who are enlightened, what is the quality of their participation in politics? Are we all just waiting to get there someday so that we too will have our own slice of the national cake?
The elite seems to be at, okay, you want to respond, because I just wanted to add that the elite in the country are always being tongue-lashed as the ones not allying, the factoring of quality education, that's entrepreneurship or creative skills in the Nigerian youth. Is that what you've been seeing from your leadership organization?
Clearly, our Bible says, to whom much has been given, from him much more is expected. So if we lash on the elite, it's for good reason, because the elite have been given certain opportunities, certain privileges, on account of which we expect a lot more from the elite than we're getting today. But back on what he said about education, I just want to highlight and emphasize what he said about education. Let's look at countries that are making it and have a lot of promise for the future. The Scandinavian countries. Finland, number 1. Sweden, number 2. Denmark, number 3. They have gone a lot beyond the standard minimum UNICEF prescription for education, which is 26.something%. Then Finland is 40%. They are hovering around 40% of the annual budget of the country. Nigeria is still 6 or 7%. Now, so you have, we say we are 200 million people, and it is only 6% of your annual budget you give to education, or 7%, and you have these hordes of unemployed and unemployable people. How are we going to get out of that poverty? And then while you give 6% to education, then you give so much to the overheads of the bureaucracy of governance. How are we ever going to get out of this? And I say, let's take a look at countries that hold a lot of promise for the future. What are they doing to education? Nursery school teachers, primary school teachers, high school teachers in Finland get the highest salaries. Go and cross-check. They get the highest salaries. People compete to be high school teachers in Finland, to be nursery school teachers in Finland. People compete. They get more money than top-level politicians. Why? Because the leaders can see
that these are the leaders of the future, these are the technicians and the entrepreneurs and the Nobel laureates of the future. If we invest in them, then our country will be great in future. And they are doing it. And within 10, 15, 20 years, they are already seeing the result. Where we are, and shamelessly still voting less than 7-8% of our annual budget for education, when we are still so low at level of standard education, quality education, entrepreneurial education, then we cannot hope to come out of this massive poverty, if we do not lay the foundation for a brighter future in solid education, technical education, computer education. Technology is able to solve so many problems today. Can you imagine that we are still talking about importing or producing millions of tons of fertilizer in an age where, because of global warming, everybody is talking of how to move away from fertilizer and get into organic
agriculture.
So we are still talking about how we can increase our fertilizer production or fertilizer importation. So see how far we are behind. Just yesterday I was watching on BBC how in some country they are trying to develop from the air and from the environment some protein that will replace soya beans because of the amount of global warming that is coming from the production of soya beans. Now, can you imagine? I watched how a young man in America is producing water and sending to different difficult areas where they do not have water from the environment, from the horizon, vapor. And he's getting tons and tons, hundreds or thousands or millions of tons of water from vapor. And he's producing these machines and sending to small places. Now, where are our technicians? Where is the encouragement of government for those who have flair in these areas to work? If a young man has such flair now, is there the Ministry of Science and Technology that he can go and be sure of getting resources that he needs?
The Ministry of Science and Technology that you've mentioned, you've not even, asked the question, what are they creating technologically? That's an agency. Please, in 1 minute,
Omagbitse. Say something about all of this, and very quickly, is that what we have is a culture of entitlement. What we need is a culture of enterprise. And we need, as a whole society, to start to move away from an entitlement culture. It's the fault of the quality of leaders that we've had over the years, the choices that we continue to make about these leaders, and years will come again. 3 years from now, we will go to the polls again, and it's as if they will have robbed off something, and we will go back again to the same quality of people who are not concerned about the common good, people who do not have experience and a track record in issues concerning the common people.
So these problems are not intractable? Because I see some kind of hopelessness and helplessness.
It's not hopeless. Just see, what is our cash cow in Nigeria? Oil, right? Go and find out. Till today, 2020, the Nigerian revenue mobilization, whatever, is still analog. They don't have digital equipment to track how much oil we produce or sell in this country.
Even DPR does not. Would interrogate that later. Let me provoke something that a lot of Nigerians will find difficult to go into, they don't want to say because of its religiosity. What is being the contribution of the church in alleviating poverty? Because what pervades the landscape and mindscape of the average Nigerian is that of wanton wealth, where, for example, you talked about in the years back how the missionaries, whether Christian or the Muslim missionaries, set up institutions from primary to secondary school where they trained leaders. Those leaders are the ones that we've been interrogating here, not being able to drive policies that can alleviate poverty. But what has been the church's contribution in the last 30 years? A lot of people see it as a money-spinning venture and not for evangelism.
Well,
the schools, for example.
Here, let's speak about churches. because I still know what the Anglican churches are doing, what the Methodist churches are doing.
I thought it's one body of Christ.
Well, yes,
isn't it?
But we do have different orientations within that body, and we must admit that we have different orientations. For example, you have heads of churches in Nigeria who don't consider it odd to buy private jets and fly private jets around with the money collected from the people.
Because they control the monies directly.
Yeah. Now, that is not the case in my Catholic church. I cannot spend the money that I collect from, which is a member of my chaplaincy. I cannot spend the money I collect. There is a budget that is approved by the diocese every year, and in my own case, we hardly can meet up our running budget. But even if we met it and there's anything extra, the diocese will take it and take to Sabo Kawu, take to the villages around to support them there. So we don't have a situation where our church is a money spinner for the pastor. That is why the highest ranking Catholic clergies in Nigeria are Cardinal Okoje and Cardinal Onaekon. Now, go and see the simplicity of their lives. See where they live, see whatever. And they go around with the seminarian or something. They don't have any bodyguards and so on. See the simplicity of their life, because our church structure does not permit that the resources generated in the church is appropriated by the individual priest or bishop.
Okay.
However, whatever is appropriated, whatever is earned in the church is used for, go and take a look at the schools that churches run. We run some of the best schools, Catholic Church, some of the best schools in Nigeria. Check the fees as against some others. Recently, I had to do an analysis. You have secondary schools in Nigeria collecting 5.5 million, 5 million, 4 million. The highest secondary school in Nigeria in terms of fees is Loyola Jesuit Colleges, 2.8 million naira per annum. And it is tops.
That's not for the poor, too.
It is tops.
It's not for the poor.
It is not. Nobody in Nigeria contributed money for the Loyola Jesuit College. It was built by Jesuits International and with American money. So nobody in Nigeria can say it is our money that was used to build.
I thought it's supposed to be, something of charity, something that helps to develop the society, to develop the mind.
Listen, it was built by Jesuit society. It's an international society.
For commercial purposes.
Not for commercial. I'm saying they are being subvented, being augmented. The schools that are of the level of Loyola Jesuit College, their school fees is about 4.5 million.
So education at the end of the day is not cheap and cannot be free.
It cannot be free. It is Loyola Jesuit is being supported.
Where is the place of the poor man, the poverty, the poor man on the streets that you're fighting for now?
Let me tell you, the Catholic Church continues to run several schools all over the country that are charging the kind of money that poor people can attend. Now, there are a few celebrity schools like Loyola Jesuit College. But have you asked some of the schools that are number 2, number 3, number 8, number 10? Have you asked about Christ the King College in Onitsha? How much do they charge as school fees? Many poor people are able to attend. It's one of the top schools in Nigeria. Have you asked about Christ the King College in Abuja, Regina Paches in Abuja, St. Louis, Louisville? These are charging fees that are very cheap, and yet a lot of people are able to attend, and they are among the top schools.
Okay, let's look at the contribution of the church in its generality now, to alleviating this poverty. I don't know, Omagbitse, if you have any contact in such area. Have they really helped to reduce poverty in the country? Before you come in,
Omagbitse come in, very briefly, we have the Justice, Development and Peace Commission in Nigeria. Every diocese has Justice Development and Peace Commission. The national body has Justice Development and Peace Commission. We have Caritas Nigeria. There is a lot that is being done on a daily basis down to the villages with health care. Throughout the whole period of the HIV pandemic, go and find out the agencies that were most active in helping to cure people of HIV/AIDS. Until today, go and find out when Ebola came and so on. These Justice and Peace Development Commissions, the health commissions of the Catholic Church at every level, they are involved daily. These are not things that are in the news every day.
Quite understandable. Some people now will look at it that you're defending your own faith and the rest. How about the miracle churches? How much, I'm looking at it in totality. How much has the church in Nigeria helped to reshape the world of the youth in Nigeria? Omagbitse.
Well, I think rather unfortunately, just like what Father was trying to say. So when people hear the church, you've got to understand
it's one body of Christ.
Yes, but with different structures,
Management.
with different management, with different even approaches to what they do.
So it's still the same Nigerian syndrome here now.
So the churches in Nigeria that you are talking about, the miracle churches, unfortunately, they are contributing significantly to damaging the mindset of young people. The whole emphasis on prosperity, the fact that if you are not doing well, then it means that Jesus is not working in your life.
No, there must be an ancestral curse,
Exactly.
that you must go
so
and
some
uproot.
of these things, unfortunately, are actually destroying the psyche of people, leading people to become very desperate.
To the extent that the youths now engage in rituals for quick money.
All sorts of things. And again, all under the guise of I am going to church and I am a Christian. So that's a big problem. The difference between what people espouse as their faith and the real things that they practice every day. And I believe as a Christian that when we Christians in Nigeria start to really follow the tenets of our faith, even if we can get 5-10% of us doing it, it would affect society. So we need to be more Christian in our affairs and be less concerned about being Christians in business and Christians in politics, because we hear people talk about things like this. Say, how many people were appointed who are Christians? How many people who are CEOs are Christians? As if to say...
Religion shouldn't be...
as if to say because they are named Christians that they will do what is truly Christian. The evidence shows that they don't.
Contrary. Yeah.
Okay, let me come to you, Father Ehusani. Now, we've talked about all the problems, bedeviling, policy, not formulation now, because it is understandable that even the United Nations has said it times without number through their different agencies. Nigeria formulates the best of policies, but driving those policies to fruition is always the problem. What quick fix can we have? There's no development plan. 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Now it's a matter of turnaround maintenance of the youths.
We need to look at leadership. You know, leadership. We need to look at it. At the quality of persons that are superintending, whether it is our economy or our politics and so on and so forth. We really need to look at it. And it is very urgent because at every level, go to the local government level now. You know, we focus on the national, but we often neglect local government level. Who are those running your local government, my local government at home? What is their pedigree? What is the expertise that they bring into it? Now, you discover that they are not the kind of persons that you will employ as your PA that are often running a number of our local governments. So so we need to look at leadership from the local government councillor level. I have recommended, and I'll end with this, I have recommended that retired professors, retired managing directors should please volunteer 4 years to go and serve at the local government level.
The same professors from the academia, they are more theoretical in Nigeria
well,
than being practical. Because it's taking the youth. I mean, Omagbitse said he went to the best business school in Nigeria, but he gained nothing in entrepreneurship.
But the kind of MDs and professors who don't need the little money that goes to local government, who don't need to embezzle those ones. People who have been...
All right, it's really time to go, you know. I want to thank you most fervently indeed, Omagbitse Barrow, strategic consultant, and Reverend Father George Ehusani, who is the executive director of Luxterra Leadership Foundation.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Do join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja. Goodbye and thanks for watching.